inhale through the nose. Genesis 2 verse 7, and God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his in the nose. When you open your mouth and breathe in through your mouth, you are delivering to your lungs dirty air. It has not been purified. So it must be in through the nose. Nose
breathing. We do it about 20,000 times a day without a second thought. But are we even doing it right? You might think, how could I possibly be breathing wrong? It's automatic, isn't it? But Barbara O'Neill reveals some surprising insights that show many of us have been getting this basic function wrong, and the implications are more serious than you might think. Let's dive into the 9 ways you could be breathing wrong. Number 1. Shallow breathing. The first common mistake is shallow breathing. Many people take shallow breaths without realizing it, only allowing air to fill the upper parts of their lungs. This results in less oxygen being absorbed into the bloodstream, meaning your body doesn't get the oxygen it needs to function efficiently. Barbara points out that shallow breathing, also known as chest breathing, is a big contributor to why so many people feel tired, anxious, or even lightheaded throughout the day.
So when I said the Framingham Heart Study showed that by the age of 50, most people had lost 40% lung capacity, how is that? Many people have become high chest breathers. Do you know what that means? They're only using the top.
Shallow breathing is often a result of stress or poor habits. It can cause increased tension in the body and lead to chronic fatigue over time. Instead of fully expanding the diaphragm and taking in deep breaths, shallow breathing leads to a cycle where you're constantly getting less oxygen, which means less energy. It's a self-perpetuating issue. The less you breathe deeply, the more your body and mind suffer, leading to a continuous cycle of exhaustion. Many of us are stuck in this shallow breathing pattern, unaware of how much it limits our energy levels and overall health. Unfortunately, since it's an automatic process, we rarely pay attention to how we're doing it unless we're forced to. But this inattentiveness often leaves us missing out on one of the most fundamental ways to energize the body naturally. Number 2. Mouth breathing. Next up, Barbara O'Neill points out something many people don't even realize. Breathing, especially at night, is more common than you'd think, and it can cause a range of health problems. You might not be aware of it, but breathing through your mouth rather than your nose could have more serious effects than it seems.
So if you're breathing out through your mouth, you lose too much carbon dioxide. And you breathe in deeply through your mouth, you can be getting too much oxygen. Is too much oxygen bad? Well, it can float all around your blood, but it can't get into the cell unless that carbon dioxide is present.
Have you ever thought about why we're designed to breathe through our noses? Well, the nose acts like a natural filter, trapping dust, allergens, and pollutants. It also warms and humidifies the air before it enters the lungs.
Now, there is a way to help yourself become a nose breather, and that's tape up your mouth. Now, you don't have to tape it up like this. And the idea is you just put a little bit of tape under the nose to the chin. And you do that for 1 hour a day for a week, and then you can sleep with it overnight. Yes, snoring and sleep apnea would almost be a thing of the past.
However, when you breathe through your mouth, you skip this entire process, allowing harmful particles and irritants to flow straight into your lungs. So, this is the main thing. You're missing out on your body's built-in protection.
And blood pressure, if monkeys can have blood pressures rising, all sorts of problems. And what they found is because they weren't breathing through their noses, the little canals at the back of the nose started to shrink and even grow a little skin over them. After 6 months, they unplugged the noses and they taped the mouth up. So now the monkeys had to...
Another thing you might not realize is that mouth breathing leads to a dry mouth. This can result in bad breath and even increases your chances of getting cavities because less saliva is produced to fight bacteria. And it doesn't stop there. Mouth breathing can also make you more vulnerable to respiratory infections since you're not filtering out germs and pollutants.
Breather. And then he came across a man who was having an asthma attack, and he told the man to shut nicely his mouth. Close your mouth. And the man looked at him horrified because he felt he had to open his mouth to get more air. But he found that when they closed their mouths and forced themselves to breathe through their nose, that the asthma started to ease.
Have you ever considered how this impacts your oxygen intake? Breathing through the nose is much more efficient at delivering oxygen to your body. In contrast, breathing through your mouth reduces the amount of oxygen you get, and over time, this can affect your lung function and put unnecessary stress on your body.
I'll tell you about a study that was done on some poor old monkeys, but this is probably not near as bad as some of the things they've done to monkeys. This researcher plugged up their noses for 6 months. And he plugged up their noses so that forced them to only breathe through their mouths. Their whole face structure changed, the jaw dropped down, and believe it or not, they were all snoring and blood pressure, if monkeys can have blood pressures rising, all sorts of problems. And what they found is because they weren't breathing through their noses, the little canals at the back of the nose started to shrink and even grow a little skin over them. After 6 months, they unplugged the noses and they taped the mouth up.
So, even though mouth breathing might seem harmless, it's a habit that can lead to bigger issues like infections, poor sleep, and even long-term changes in facial structure. The best thing you can do? Train yourself to breathe through your nose, especially at night, to support your health and give your body the protection it needs.
And by the way, because they're having to breathe through their mouth, then the little canals at the back of their nose are getting smaller and smaller. And so then the next option is to have it drilled out.
Mouth breathing is also closely linked to sleep disorders like snoring and sleep apnea, conditions that can severely disrupt sleep quality. You might not realize it, but when you breathe through your mouth, it can make these issues worse. Sleep apnea in particular occurs when the airway becomes blocked during sleep, and mouth breathing can contribute to this blockage. As a result, poor sleep often leads to ongoing fatigue and a general feeling of tiredness throughout the day. This creates a vicious cycle of bad sleep, causing more mouth breathing, and the mouth breathing further harms your sleep, making it difficult to break free without addressing the root cause. Number 3. Irregular breathing patterns. The third mistake Barbara discusses is irregular breathing patterns. Many people experience irregular breathing rhythms without even realizing it, whether it's from stress, anxiety, or simply a lack of awareness. Irregular breathing can mean anything from holding your breath intermittently to varying the depth of each breath in an unbalanced way. It throws your body off balance and keeps your systems from functioning optimally.
What a difference oxygen makes. And as we looked earlier in the week, we need adequate carbon dioxide levels to be able to take in adequate amounts of oxygen. So 4 docking stations for oxygen on every hemoglobin. And for that hemoglobin to pick up the oxygen, it has to have 4 molecules of carbon dioxide.
For example, when people are stressed or anxious, they may unconsciously hold their breath or take very rapid, shallow breaths. This leads to an imbalance in oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in the body, which can worsen feelings of anxiety or unease. The inconsistency in breathing sends signals to the brain that something is wrong, which can trigger the release of stress hormones, perpetuating the feeling of anxiety. Our bodies thrive on rhythm. Just as our hearts beat in a regular pattern, our breathing should also follow a steady rhythm. Disrupted or inconsistent breathing can prevent the body from entering a relaxed state, making it harder to unwind and even affecting the quality of your sleep. Barbara points out that most people aren't even aware when they are falling into these irregular breathing patterns, making it one of the most overlooked but critical mistakes. Number 4. Ignoring air quality. We often don't think much about the air we breathe, right? I mean, have you ever really stopped to think about the quality of the air around you? Most of us just assume that as long as we're able to breathe it in, it's fine. But here's the thing. Barbara O'Neill makes clear that air quality plays a huge role in how well we can breathe and stay healthy. You might not be aware, but ignoring air quality could actually be a major mistake. The air around us is often filled with pollutants, allergens, and toxins, and over time, breathing that can lead to some serious health problems.
Whenever you've got movement, moisture and air, you've got the production of negative ions. If you've got a lot of moisture but not a lot of movement or air, what have you got growing there now? Mold, that's right.
You see, breathing in polluted air doesn't just mess with your lungs, it actually impacts your entire body. Crazy, right? Poor air quality has been linked to things like chronic inflammation, putting extra stress on your heart, and even messing with your brain function. Yep, that's right. Bad air can affect how you think and feel. When your body is constantly exposed to harmful particles in the air, it goes into defense mode, trying to fight them off. But doing that non-stop, it wears your body out, leading to constant inflammation and fatigue. So it's not just about your lungs, it's really about your overall health and well-being. And here's something else to think about. If you live in an urban area, the risks are even higher. Cities with heavy traffic, construction, and factories pump all kinds of pollutants into the air, creating dangerous environments. Now, the body is pretty tough, no doubt about it. But repeated exposure to all that pollution without any breaks can wear it down over time. The kicker? Many people don't even realize how bad it is until they start feeling the effects. So, consider taking a break and getting some fresh air. Trust me, your body will thank you. Taking time to breathe clean air is super important to help your system reset and function the way it's supposed to. Why risk your health when the solution is as simple as fresh air?
And breathe deeply and make sure those windows are open, especially while you're sleeping, so you can prevent the loss of that lung capacity if you do that. And if you have lost that lung capacity, you can regain it by exercising it.
Number 5. Indoor air pollution. Barbara O'Neill emphasizes that it's not just the air outside. We need to be worried about indoor air pollution, which is a huge problem too. In fact, you might be surprised to learn that the air inside your home can be even more polluted than the air outdoors. But why is that? Well, think about all the dust, pet dander, chemicals from cleaning products, mold, and other pollutants floating around in your living space. These things add up, and if your home isn't properly ventilated, you're breathing in all that junk for hours on end.
But one of the reasons why people get excess mucus in the respiratory areas is because of an allergy.
When you're exposed to indoor air that's filled with these pollutants, your lungs are slowly taking in toxins that can harm your respiratory health. The problem is, most people don't even think about the air they're breathing at home. We tend to worry about outdoor pollution from cars or factories, but what about the air inside, where we spend most of our time? The reality is that breathing in this polluted indoor air for long periods can reduce lung function, cause chronic respiratory problems, and even worsen existing health issues like asthma or allergies. One of the main culprits in poor indoor air quality is mold. Mold can grow in damp, poorly ventilated areas like bathrooms, kitchens, or basements.
Also, one must check the house. I'm sure there's a lot of mold activity in my compost bin, but it's nowhere near my house. There must not be any mold in the house. If there is, you've got to find out why. Never put bleach on mold. You put bleach on mold, you will create one of the most toxic mixtures on the planet.
You might not always see it, but it can release tiny spores into the air that you breathe in. If you're sensitive to mold, these spores can trigger allergic reactions, asthma attacks, or other respiratory issues. Even if you're not allergic, prolonged exposure to mold can still harm your lungs over time.
If there's any mold in your house, you put a mask on, put white vinegar in a spray bottle, spray it, and leave the room immediately. Come back 15 minutes later and you can wipe it up. If you spray and wipe, the dust comes off, it'll go through your pores of your skin, you can inhale it. This is toxic stuff.
Barbara also points out that a lot of homes are poorly ventilated, which makes the problem even worse. Without proper airflow, all those pollutants just build up inside. You might be breathing shallowly or improperly indoors without even realizing it, but it's having a compounding effect on your health over time. And it's not just homes, offices, schools, and other indoor spaces that can have the same problem. Another factor people often overlook is the chemicals from household cleaning supplies. Many cleaning products contain harsh chemicals that release fumes into the air, contributing to indoor pollution. Every time you clean with products like bleach or ammonia, those fumes hang around and can irritate your lungs. Over time, regular exposure to these chemicals can lead to long-term respiratory problems. Switching to more natural or non-toxic cleaning supplies can help reduce this risk. Pet owners should also be aware of pet dander, which is another common indoor pollutant. Even if you don't notice it, tiny particles of skin from your pets are floating around in the air and can irritate your lungs, especially if you have allergies. Regular cleaning and vacuuming can help, but proper ventilation is key to keeping the air fresh. So, while we often focus on outdoor pollution, Barbara O'Neill reminds us that the air in our homes and workplaces deserves just as much attention. By improving ventilation, using non-toxic cleaning products, keeping our living spaces dry and mold-free, and regularly cleaning up pet dander, we can create a healthier indoor environment. After all, breathing clean air isn't just about avoiding pollutants outside. It starts right where you live. Number 6. Sedentary behavior affecting breathing. Another factor that negatively impacts our breathing habits is sedentary behavior. The more time we spend sitting still, the less efficient our breathing becomes. Barbara explains that a lack of movement restricts the lungs' ability to expand fully, ultimately reducing the amount of oxygen we're able to take in. When you remain in a sedentary position for long periods, your lungs aren't given the chance to work at their full capacity. This lack of full lung expansion means you're not getting the optimal amount of oxygen, and your body has to work harder to meet its oxygen needs. This is one of the reasons why many people feel tired and sluggish after sitting for extended periods. Sedentary behavior is often accompanied by other poor habits, like slouching, which can also inhibit proper breathing. Over time, these habits can lead to chronic shallow breathing and a reduced ability to take deep breaths, which further limits the oxygen available to your body. Number 7. Poor posture. Poor posture is another major culprit when it comes to improper breathing, as highlighted by Barbara. Most people are unaware of how their posture affects their breathing. When you slouch, you compress the lungs, making it difficult for them to expand and take in adequate oxygen fully.
You must stand like this to be able to breathe with your abdominal muscles. In fact, if you were to learn to sing, your first lesson, your teacher would teach you how to breathe with your abdominal muscles.
Think about how you're sitting or standing right now. Are your shoulders hunched forward? Is your chest caved in? If so, your lungs are being restricted, and you're not breathing as deeply as you could be. Poor posture doesn't just affect how you look, it also directly impacts your lung function. Over time, if your body remains in a reclined position, your lung capacity decreases, and this becomes your normal way of breathing.
So what causes high chest breathing? Poor posture. So if you're standing like this, it's impossible to use your abdominal muscles with the breathing process.
This issue is especially prevalent in people who work at desks or spend a lot of time looking down at their phones. When your body is hunched over, you're effectively reducing the space in your chest cavity that's available for your lungs to expand. This results in shorter, more shallow breaths, meaning less oxygen, reduced energy, and poorer overall health. Number 8. Overlooking breathing's impact on energy. It's easy to overlook how much breathing impacts your energy levels, but Barbara makes it clear that improper breathing is a significant factor in why many people feel fatigued. Breathing is your body's way of taking in oxygen, the fuel it needs to produce energy. When you breathe incorrectly, whether that's shallow breathing, irregular patterns, or mouth breathing, you limit the amount of oxygen available for your body to use.
It's called the powerhouse of the cell. This is the mitochondria, specifically inside the Krebs cycle, which has an 8-step pathway, but that gives us 36 units of energy. And as we looked at yesterday, this pathway, no oxygen, so it produces energy by the process of fermentation, whereas the 8-step pathway, it uses oxygen. What a difference.
Less oxygen means that your cells can't produce as much energy. And this lack of energy results in fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and an overall sense of sluggishness.
The part of our body, it's actually every part of our body, requires oxygen.
Many people rely on stimulants like caffeine to feel more awake, when the true problem is that their body simply isn't getting enough oxygen to produce energy naturally. Proper breathing is like a natural boost, but because we often take it for granted, we don't realize when we're sabotaging our energy levels. If you're feeling tired, breathing properly is one of the simplest and most effective ways to boost your energy levels naturally, yet so many of us neglect it. Think about it. Your body is constantly working, and it needs oxygen to fuel all of its processes. When you're taking short, shallow breaths, you're essentially limiting the fuel available to your cells. Over time, this oxygen deficit adds up, leading to chronic fatigue and mental fog. Barbara highlights that it's not just about how much you sleep or how well you eat, it's also about how you breathe. Number 9. Ignoring breathing's role in sinus health. Lastly, Barbara O'Neill brings up an interesting point that many of us don't really think about how our breathing habits can actually affect our sinus health. You might not have connected the two before, but poor breathing habits, especially mouth breathing, can lead to all kinds of sinus problems. Have you ever noticed that when you breathe through your mouth, your nose tends to feel dry and uncomfortable? That's because mouth breathing causes your nasal passages to dry out, leading to inflammation and blockages. Before you know it, you're stuck in a cycle where it becomes harder to breathe through your nose, so you keep your mouth breathing, making the problem worse.
People mouth breathe because their sinuses are blocked up. What's the next question? Why are they blocked up? Usually because of an allergy, because mucus is produced to protect those delicate linings of the nasal passage.
As we discussed earlier as well, the nose isn't just there for show. It's equipped with tiny hairs and mucous membranes that act like filters, helping to clean and humidify the air before it enters your lungs. This is your body's first line of defense against all kinds of nasty stuff like dust, allergens, and germs. When you skip this natural filtration system by breathing through your mouth, your nose doesn't get the exercise it needs to stay healthy. This can lead to a buildup of mucus, more frequent infections, and constant inflammation.
Someone that's got an allergy to these foods and there's common excess mucus building up in that area, then the microorganisms evolve into or change roles into a cleanup or clean up.
What's more, nasal breathing helps to open up your sinus passages, allowing better airflow and reducing congestion. But when you breathe improperly, you're basically inviting sinus problems into your life. Barbara O'Neill suggests that a lot of the common sinus complaints people have, like congestion or chronic sinusitis, are directly linked to not breathing through the nose properly. Many of us just accept sinus issues as a part of our daily lives, often without questioning why they're happening or if there's something we can do about it. We might think it's just allergies, or it's the season for colds. But here's the thing, improper breathing is often the hidden cause behind these ongoing problems. When we overlook the importance of how we breathe, we might be missing a crucial factor in maintaining our sinus health. Fixing the way you breathe could drastically improve not only your sinus health, but also your overall respiratory health. By being mindful of our breathing habits, we can potentially reduce inflammation, prevent infections, and breathe easier in everyday life.
So golden seal powder is an excellent snuff for the sinuses to help clear them out. And you can stop all these.
And there you have it, 9 absolutely mind-blowing ways Barbara O'Neill says you're breathing all wrong. It's fascinating how something so basic and automatic can have such a huge impact on your overall health and well-being, isn't it? Which of these breathing mistakes have you been making without even realizing it? Maybe it's something as simple as mouth breathing or not thinking about air quality. Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and of course, subscribe to our channel for more incredible content. See you in the next one.